So I'm a huge fan of this artist by the name of Oliver Francis. And one of my favorite songs by him is a song called Tokyo Splash. It is an older song, but that doesn't matter. How does this relate to a game? Well, it's the song sample. I always assume said sample is from a Pokemon game or something. It sounds so similar to songs from that era. And it is. But Pokemon? That's not the case. This sample is a song called Heal from the game ICO, a game I honestly hadn't heard of until I randomly got the late night urge to look up the sample of Tokyo Splash. And wow. I don't really have the words to describe what I felt in that moment. I was tired, it was late, it was the last minute thing to do. This game had something simple, something so powerful that drew me to it instantly. And in that moment, I had unknowingly began my journey down this rabbit hole. A rabbit hole I somehow never knew existed. A rabbit hole that once I found myself on the other side of, I felt like I had to share it with you all. This is my experience with ICO. Enjoy. ICO is a 2001 PlayStation 2 game made by Fumito Ueda, who also made Shadow the Colossus, what I believe is his most popular game. Maybe not, I know it's the one I've seen a lot of. And while I haven't played that game either, I've at least heard about it, so you can't blame me too much. The reason I bring this up is because ICO is commonly considered to take place in the same universe as Shadow of the Colossus, as well as another game called The Last Guardian, which upon looking this one up, it honestly gave me the same feeling as ICO, but that can wait for another day. Upon taking a look at ICO, you find two box arts. This one, which people would prefer if you didn't speak of, and I get it, so goodbye, and the other one, which I think despite how simple this is, it's beautiful. And now having actually played the game, this cover does such a good job of capturing what the game feels like in such a small picture. One last thing before we actually hop in, this video's footage is all from the channel on screen. You see, when I recorded this, it was in about 2 days and it was pretty quick. And therefore, I never got the chance to check my recordings. And it's all freezy and just unusable. So yeah, this impacts absolutely nothing in game, but it's not fair if I don't say something. So credit, just go show them support. But finally, let's go check out ICO. ICO begins with birds chirping and leaves rustling, as you happen upon a boy being transported to these strange ruins. The boy is horned and held captive, but before you get time to think on this oddity, the camera pans towards a bright castle just on the horizon, only a simple bridge away. You then click Start Game, and the only thing ICO asks is if you want to turn vibration on. Turn it on, just trust me. We then see the boy being brought onto a boat, sailed across the body of water, and brought through this cave and passageway, almost as if this whole thing is a routine. They then mention a sword before guiding the boy up the castle, a castle powered by that strange sword. At the top, they lock the boy into a mechanical pod, telling him this is for the good of the village. And as they begin to leave, the castle powers down. It causes everything to shake, which obviously scares the boy, causing him to shake in his pod until it falls and breaks, knocking him out in the process. He then dreams of himself climbing a dark tower and finding a singular cage at the top. And as the cage drips, a dark substance that forms into a being, we're sucked into some sort of shadow. Our protagonist then wakes up, now broken out of that terrifying chamber. One chamber of many, all perhaps filled with individuals just like you. It's a scary thought. It seems we were meant to be part of some sort of sacrifice, one of many, and I can't help but notice these pods look a lot like all that weird magic technology we've seen so far. We're left to investigate the area, and after learning the way we came from is sealed, we have no choice but to head up and deeper into the castle. Oh yeah, by the way, the boy we play as, his name is ICO, the game's named after him. And something to mention as we begin ICO's journey is there's no menus, there's not a HUD, and not even a tutorial. It's fitting. ICO has been completely abandoned, assumedly as some sort of weird sacrifice. He has nothing on his mind besides escaping. Therefore, there's no time at all for something like a tutorial. And this is something I thought was very immersive. ICO is then able to keep climbing and reaches a tower resembling the one from his dream. And at the top, he realizes the cage isn't filled with a dark substance, but a person. ICO then frees the lady by dropping the cage to the ground and breaking it. And as the lady steps out, she speaks. She is then attacked by these shadow monsters, but luckily enough, they're just weak enough for the small ICO to hold them back. Though, these shadow monsters tell ICO this place is dangerous and they need to leave, like right now. And when they rush to the door, she opens it? She possesses the same magic as that sword. That's definitely something to know, but whatever. Right now, we can't think about that. A lot just happened to us. The lady spoke, and while she did, she definitely spoke to us, you actually can't understand her. In a new game, her speech is all gibberish presented through these hieroglyphic subtitle things, like I think I see a scorpion in there, maybe. But it isn't until New Game Plus that you can actually understand what she's saying. ICO also says, they tried to sacrifice me because I have horns. He really was a sacrifice. And so I made the assumption that the girl must be one too, and I was happy to lead her to escape. As for the girl, she reminded me of an angel. After all, she's an all-white being in this dark environment. She definitely stands out. And we did free her as she fell from the sky. And so I quickly took to calling this angel my little lady. Even though she's clearly not little, she's like a whole foot taller than ICO. I don't know why I did this, perhaps it's because of another song I've enjoyed recently, but yeah. Together, me and my little lady work to escape this strange castle. With our little lady on her side, this is where ICO truly lets you play, as you are now able to access the two main parts of the gameplay. Through your journey, you are faced with parkour, puzzles, any type of challenge you can think of. And it's your job to guide yourself and the little lady through it. And don't get it twisted, she does help too, as she's able to use this castle's weird magical device thingies. I haven't figured out what they are yet. Keep in mind, this is all without a HUD, menus, nor a single tutorial. You don't even get a big assortment of buttons to use either. You can interact, jump, climb, attack, and call your little lady. That's it. It's truly only you and your experience that can figure this world out. And I think this choice turns this simple situation into something so satisfying. It's you, your mind, and your controller lightly rumbling from your subtle footsteps, a detail I absolutely love, left to explore this dreamlike world. You also have to keep the little lady safe, as those shadow thingies will constantly come for her. They attempt to drag her into their shadow realm and take her from you, forcing you to fight back and constantly keep an eye on her. When it comes to the battles, well, they're nothing crazy. Smash enemies and pull her out of the shadow, and I don't even think you can die from these enemies. Which does make sense because they're shadows, but it's also very weird being invincible in combat. I'm pretty sure the only ways I found out how to get a game over in ICO is if they take her or from fall damage. Well, and there's one more way, but I can't talk about it yet. Anyways, you can either try and outrun the shadows or fight. But sometimes you really don't get the choice, and that's okay. I do not mind fighting for the little lady at all. Eventually, ICO and the little lady reach the castle's grand doors. But as they run towards the exit, the door begins to close, and in the rush, our little lady collapses. As ICO turns around, he witnesses another shadow rise from the ground. But this one is different. This one is clearly above the others, that becoming a fact when she speaks. She asks Yorda to come back, revealing herself as our little lady's mother, before explaining that Yorda lives in a whole different world and leaving. As we help our little lady up, we hear the Shadow Woman speaking to her, asking her why can't she understand. She can never survive in the outside world. But Yorda, our little lady, finally has a name. And while it's an absolutely beautiful name, I couldn't stop referring to her as my little lady for the rest of my time on ICO. Still, we learn that apparently Yorda can't leave this castle. But even then, this doesn't discourage ICO as he helps her up and continues to guide her along. With that, I think it's the perfect time to save. It's the song! When I tell you the first time I saved, I sat here for like 10 minutes. Not just because this soundtrack is what got me into the game in the first place, but because this feels like the first time we've actually heard a soundtrack in-game. While there is a few tracks here and there, the only ones that sounded close to songs were in cutscenes. I was also quick to notice that as I explore this weird, strange world, it's noticeably devoid of sound. Besides my calls to Yorda, my footsteps, and the occasional ambient noise here and there, it's weirdly quiet. Even in combat, where you would expect to hear the typical heroic sounding song, or at least the soundtrack, it's instead replaced by subtle, mysterious sounding ambiance. If you can even hear it over the shadow monsters. This makes these rest areas all the more special. The quietness of battle contrasted to the comfortable but loud soundtrack. It's such a beautiful choice. Upon noticing this, I instantly connected it to the thought of, well, battles aren't meant to feel epic or crazy in ICO at all, rather dreading. You don't want Yorda taken from you. So when you do reach these rest areas, it's a big moment of relief, where you can sit down knowing you are truly safe. And the soundtrack beautifully reflects that. But now it's time to get up. Our journey through this dreamlike world isn't over just because the door closed. We now have two options: find a different exit or open the door. And so we choose the latter, opting to power up these light generator thingy mabobbers. Using Yorda's magic and ICO's skills, we work to open these giant metal doors that face the big one. We also set this device to face the right way so it can capture sunlight, I think. The sunlight is then directed towards the smaller doors we already opened, and since it's able to now pass through, it powers the huge generator looking thing near the castle door, powering it up. This implies that the light powers the door, and in turn the whole castle. This being the moment that it clicked that these magic doors, the sword from the beginning, our little lady's powers, they're light. I know this should have been obvious with the enemies being darkness and shadows, but yeah. Though, this revelation led me to an interesting question. If this light destroys these shadows, and Yorda is the daughter of one of these shadows, why is she able to use the light? For now, I didn't have the answer nor the time to think on it, as I had found my way to the second set of doors and opened them, fully powering up the castle's grand doors. Hopefully, everything goes well this time. I don't want to see my little lady hurt again. I keep this hope in my mind as we approach the door and Yorda uses the last of her power to open it. While now weaker than ever, forcing us to walk slowly as Yorda can barely stand, we push forward across the bridge as escape is literally on the horizon. We take careful, slow steps and reach the halfway point. But then, Yorda is entangled by the light and pulled back, causing her to fall and the door to be closed, in turn lowering the bridge and separating us. Her mother's words then echo in my mind. She said Yorda can't survive in the outside world. The truth being, she's unable to leave the castle in the first place. While we struggle to find her balance back on the bridge, Yorda extends her weakened arm for us to grab. And the game gives you control here. But I didn't even take time to think about what to do. I instantly made the jump for my little lady. We've survived. Barely. I don't know how we've lived falling from that height, especially without injury. I imagine Eco's back hurts like hell, but it probably would have been way worse if we didn't land on these cages. I'm not even gonna ask. It's not the time. We need to go save Yorda. For the first time since the beginning, we're alone. And while maybe it should be relieving because we only have ourselves to worry about now, it's not. At this point, I had unknowingly became very attached to Yorda, something I had only really realized when I made the jump for her on that bridge. And now, not having her, it sucks. I miss her. And while yes, I'm obviously working to save her, it seems like we won't be able to avoid a fight against that Shadow Queen of the castle and her mother. It's also important to mention this area we found ourselves in is very different from the rest of the game. It's dark, gloomy, but most of all, it's loud, with constant noise from the waves and weather. This is a huge contrast from everything we've seen up to this point, and it reminds me of one thing: Yorda. I know we just went over this, but it makes me miss her. This huge change is a super clever way to not only emphasize our situation, but make me more drawn towards the objective. That objective being finding Yorda and returning things to how they were a couple minutes ago. And it's amazing how it does this without saying a single thing to me. Eventually we reach a familiar sight, the passageway we had arrived in. I remember mentions of the light sword in the same area, leading to my discovery of said sword, which finally allows ICO to use the same light power Yorda has had the whole time. The boat we were brought in is also still here, which made me think of our potential escape. But also, what happened to the people who brought us here? If they came by boat, they would leave by boat. I hope they're okay, but not. They did kinda try to sacrifice us after all. Using our new light sword, we head up to where it all began. Finding Yorda being subjected to what seemed like a ritual to me by those weird shadow beings. This begins a long battle against dozens of them, but with our newfound power of light, they all fall in one shot. Finally, we get to try and tend to our little lady, but she's turned to stone. This led me to the assumption that that ritual they were doing was to turn her into one of them, as while her mother is a shadow, Yorda doesn't resemble one bit. With her turned to stone, ICO has no choice but to head forward into the throne room, finding nothing. But as he leaves, Yorda's mother, the Shadow Queen, stops him. In a scene that has no reason to go this hard, we confront her before she tells us we are far too late and reveals what Yorda truly is to her. The queen is growing old, and in order to combat this, she will use Yorda to resurrect herself. As in her words, to be my spiritual vessel is the fulfillment of her destiny. Her plan all along was to use her own daughter as a way to extend her life. This clicks everything into place. Why children with horns seem to be sacrifices. Why Yorda was found in a cage, and why she was so eager to escape with us. The queen then reveals when Yorda wakes up, it won't be her anymore. She will no longer exist and tells us to leave, saying it's what Yorda would want. This angers ICO. It should. And so he strikes, but is knocked back as the final boss fight begins. We grab her sword, run up and strike, before it is yet again deflected. We're knocked back and we lose the sword, but I think her barrier is getting weaker. But now I have no sword. We can't walk in front of her blast without the sword's power keeping us safe. We gotta make a run to pick it up. Still, I don't think there's enough time. Luckily enough for us though, her throne room has these pillars that shield the blast and slide around the ground pretty easily. We can use them to reach our sword and strike again. We repeat this process until the shield breaks, letting us know the next strike will be final. And it is. ICO slays the queen, but not before a warning. Yorda will never be able to leave the castle, even if she dies. The queen's death then results in a huge light explosion that throws ICO across the room, breaking his horns and knocking him out. Cutting to Yorda, we see her being powered by the pods presumably filled with other horned children, resulting in her waking up completely covered in that shadow-like substance. But wait, is this even Yorda? After all, the queen just said to us we're already too late, and not to mention the whole shadow thing that's clearly going on. This thought plagued me as we watched the shadow Yorda carry ICO from the now ruined castle, bringing him to the boat as the castle crumbles from beneath her. She places him in the boat and pushes him away, leaving him with the words, "Goodbye." Okay, wait, I know this is a super special moment and all, but I need to talk about the soundtrack that plays here. This soundtrack instantly became so special to me. Not only is it because it's my favorite genre of video game ending music, the type that just makes you want to cry, but it's actually not just a random song chosen for the credits. This song is called "You Were There," and when you take a look at the lyrics, it's almost as if it's a person in the castle describing the world beyond the castle. I personally interpreted this as Yorda's song. The word "no no mori" is what she says to ICO, meaning thank you. With this song being played in the ending, where ICO's journey is basically complete, it's very fitting as her thank you for trying to help her. This isn't over yet though. ICO wakes up on the shore and wanders, eventually finding, you guessed it, Yorda. A beautiful ending for this dreamlike game, and I really love that this ending seems fairly open-ended. At face value, it reveals Yorda is okay and that ICO was able to escape. I also noticed that this is the most detailed shot of Yorda's face we get in ICO, something I think illustrates that she's broken free of whatever curse or hold the castle has on her, showing her as more human than ever before. This ending leaves you to hope that they live happy ever after, but sadly, I really don't think this is the only way to see the ending. Once I got past my emotions and really thought about this ending, I realized there's a very big possibility it's very sad. Not only do we see her push ICO away and her stay on the island, but she washes up completely unharmed, after that whole castle would have just fallen on her. Oh, and my biggest issue personally? What happened to the shadow she was enveloped in? It's just gone? None of this makes any logical sense. Not to mention the queen's words. She said when Yorda wakes up, it'll be her, not Yorda. And when she does eventually wake up, she is enveloped in that same shadow as the queen. You could think that she was lying in that moment when she said that, but honestly, I don't think she has a reason to lie, At this point, she had won and taken Yorda. She also told ICO the truth before when she said Yorda couldn't leave. The castle did pull her back the second she tried. To me, this changes a lot about the ending and gives us two big questions. Is this even Yorda? And the one I was more invested in, did any of this ending really happen? I've really come to like the idea that maybe this whole ending is some sort of dream. After all, it begins when ICO is knocked out in a similar way to the beginning of the game, where we definitely saw him dream. There's also an alternate ending that I really need to mention. When ICO washes up on the shore, he finds a watermelon and eats it with Yorda. And to me it's cute, I love it, but it's a bit random, wouldn't you say? I seen this and to me it spoke truth to the dream idea. I mean, it makes perfect sense for a child to dream of eating a celebratory food like watermelon with someone he's come to like a lot. Especially when you consider that it's a common Japanese pastime to eat watermelon during warmer times. You know, like when spending time on a beach. I love that the idea of a dream implies so much possibility. Is ICO okay? Did he perhaps pass on and is dreaming about an end to his journey? Did the queen win and defeat ICO? Was she actually able to take Yorda's body? Or is this maybe the afterlife? In the end, we will never know. And we're not meant to know. Never. Any idea is valid. I personally love open-ended games that end just like this, because I get to do these segments where I spew my ideas endlessly, and I just did that. But now I think that's all I got in the tank for this one. I think I'm just gonna avoid what I think is really the truth, which would be the dream, and just say everything was happy ever after. They both escaped, met up, and enjoyed a sweet watermelon by the sea. To me, ICO was about living how you want, an idea that really plays into interpreting the game however you want. Yorda is stuck in a battle against her mother, an evil queen who wants nothing but to use her to extend her reign over this lifeless castle. Yorda, more than likely understanding there is nothing here, attempts to leave, wanting to live her own life separate from this castle. Alas, she's locked up until ICO finds her. ICO himself has been chosen as a sacrifice, but in a last-minute effort, he decides this isn't it for him and breaks free from his shackles. He decides he's gonna escape, and then finds Yorda, deciding to help her escape too, even if he can't understand her. He not only wants to live his own life, not as a sacrifice, but wants Yorda to do the same. It's a beautiful cause, and it's something he and her truly believe in. When ICO could have easily ran across the bridge to freedom, he instead jumps back into the castle to find Yorda. And even though her own fate seems sealed, Yorda attempts to escape herself and helps ICO do the same. But besides a beautiful ending, a beautiful meaning, just being a beautiful experience overall, there's one thing I haven't spoke on. Rather, I just really haven't found the chance to. The design of this world. I constantly mention this dreamlike scenario, yet I never really describe that. As, well, I don't think I could do the best job of describing how it works. ICO's world is noticeably very empty. There's no people besides you and Yorda. It's very quiet, and the castle is huge, yet lacks any sort of detail. I mean, there's details like textures, but like there's no furniture. Like, what are these people sitting on? Despite these details lacking, the game is very bright, and that fits considering sunlight seems to be an integral part of this world. But this also serves to illuminate this strangely empty world. Something you are clearly meant to take note of. And it's something I did take note of. It allowed me to understand that this world is trying to tell me so much without any words. I had already assumed before I had even met the queen that this castle must be dying in some sort of way, and that ICO being a sacrifice must be some part of that. Again, when we meet the queen and understand that she wants to confine Yorda to this castle for some reason. By now, we know there's absolutely no reason for anyone to want to be in this castle. and therefore it gives you the idea that there's definitely something dark going on here, and it doesn't say a single word to give you that idea. While a simple example and probably not the best I could explain how the world design plays into how you feel about the game, it does make its way back to what I said about the ending and what made it so enjoyable to me. The open-ended storytelling that I can make my own personal inferences about. But hey, that's just my experience. My first playthrough of ICO was 5 hours and 39 minutes. While short, I feel as if I've gained an experience worth so much more. It's one of those games that's gonna constantly stick with me. In the same way, months after I've played Signalis, I still think of it. Like Resident Evil 7, a game I shouldn't have been playing, but because I did, I will remember it forever. And finally, in the same way as years later, I still remember Nier Automata as if it were yesterday. I think it's so cool that it just began with the song I enjoyed. A song I enjoyed that turned into a discovery of a soundtrack. Then to my eyes being completely open to the world of ICO. I fell in love with the game, if you didn't get that by now. I fell in love with it just as I thought I would. Still, even then, I didn't think I would love it to this extent. I'm sure I will definitely be trying the other games now. Especially The Last Guardian. That game looks awesome. But hey, that's ICO. I really hope you enjoyed my video. Feel free to leave a comment, correct me, tell me what you think, just anything. I love reading and responding to comments. It's one of my favorite parts of making these videos. But I won't keep you here much longer. I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching.
Dope smoking in Tokyo, my whip rolling on cruise control. She Rukia to my Ichigo. When I hit the button, I kick the flow. Your favorite rapper turned John Doe. My flow cold, about 10 below. No footprints, I walk through the snow. I swore it on me, I let it go. I'm smoking weed and I'm lying low. Shouts on my woes in Kyoto. I'm sipping